On the 15th of August 1945, the Japanese surrendered, and that was officially the end of the Second World War. Well, today, exactly 80 years later, I'm here in St. Helen's Church in Hangleton to mark the occasion. Some survivors from that time are here today, some dignitaries, and even some young people all coming here together to mark the event. I'm going to speak to some of them. Amanda, tell us what's on the board behind you.
Okay, so these are some excerpts from a book that Anne, who is was our internee, showed me. So this is actually the Camp Lenoir, and this Anne was able to describe which block they stayed in, where they would stand for roll call, and what actually went on in the camp, the dynamics of the camp. And then she speaks about the bamboo radio. This is an example. So the bamboo radio was an actual radio that they had it in the camp, but it had been made, sort of put together, sort of a hybrid of bits and pieces that were found. So it was actually made by the internees themselves. This is the views of the camp itself. This is an internal map of the camp, and then this has got some sort of descriptions of camp life. And then this is Anne when she was 18 years old. So she was in the camp from 12 to 16 years, and then she met a very lovely man who'd also been a prisoner of war. And at 18, her father allowed her to get married, and here she is looking absolutely beautiful. And if you speak to her later on, she's still radiantly, gorgeously beautiful. Yeah.
And not only that, but I understand that she's coming later and meeting someone very special that she didn't know about their existence, and that's thanks to you, right?
Well, it's sort of a whole team effort, really. So earlier on this week, a chap called Andrew Pearson, who had also been an internee at the same camp as Anne, wrote a letter to the Telegraph. Her friend Netta then gave her the clip, and then Anne was overjoyed to find that there was somebody alive who'd been in the camp with her. So she actually wrote to him, just giving him his name and the town that he lived in, because she didn't know his address, and she just hoped that he would get the letter in time. In the meantime, I did a bit of Googling and found out that he'd actually contributed to an article in 2020, and I contacted the people who had done the article, and they were lucky enough to have his details, so we were able to get his phone number. So over the course of like 2 days, because we're now like Tuesday and we know we've got Friday coming, Anne was frantically ringing the phone, trying desperately to speak to him, and she was so excited. Last night we were in her house watching the news, where she was on the news talking about VJ Day, and we'd rang again, still no answer, and we sort of went, oh, it's not meant to be, we're not going to get to him in time. And he rang back, and they had their first ever conversation. He would have been 12, and he would have been 2. She would have been 12, he would have been 2. And we've invited him down today. And at this moment, is in the car driving to the town where he lives to pick him up and get to know him on the way back to bring him to the service. Like, it's just been the most amazing, wonderful. Been a wonderful week. It's just got more and more beautiful and so moving.
So Anne and Andrew, you've met today, really.
We have.
Just an hour ago. But you were in the same term.
Lenoir.
Yes. So this is quite incredible.
Yes.
Meeting. And tell me first, I know it's a huge story, but just tell me briefly, where were you interned and how old were you?
We were interned in Longhua, which used to be a Chinese university, and it was outside of Shanghai. It was a memory not too good, because I only did the journey once, going, and then the journey out again. I would guess it was probably something like 10 to 15 kilometers away from Shanghai.
Why were you there in the first place with your family?
Well, my father was employed by a British company, an engineering company. Am I allowed to say the name? Yes? It was then known as Babcock and Wilcox. Today, I think it's known as Babcock's only. He was British. And because we were Brits, after Pearl Harbor, we were enemies, and the Japanese took us all and put us into camp, along with Americans, French, Belgian, and Dutch.
If you had to summarize those years in the camp, I know it must be quite difficult, but what would you say about the experience?
You grew up very quickly. I went in, I was 12. I came out going on 25.
Tell me about what you're wearing on your sleeve.
We all had to wear this. This was my number. This was given to us by the Japanese. They did not tattoo us. They gave B for British, A for American, X for the Dutch and Greek, sorry, X. But the French didn't have any of them. And so that was our... Well,
And you still have it.
yes, I still have it, and I have my mother's and father's as well. And Andrew was a little bit of a baby, so he wouldn't have had one, but his mum and dad and his little brother and sister would have had the same thing.
Andrew, how many years were you at the camp?
Well, we went in about the same time,
Yeah.
and I think I was about one or maybe just over one. So my earliest memories of life are of Longwa Camp, being inside the camp, brought up there and behind barbed wire, and all my memories therefore are coloured by that fact.
VJ Day is not marked that widely in the UK. What do you feel about that?
I just feel enormous gratitude to those soldiers, airmen, whoever they were, who fought in the war against Japan, because it was a terrible war. I know particularly the Americans took the brunt of it in terms of the Pacific. And I've watched some historic films to see that island by island they came to conquer Japan eventually, or hoped to. But every island was another D-Day. And it was a tremendously costly struggle. So personally, I've felt nothing but huge gratitude in my heart since I was young to today. And I've always felt, Pearson, whatever you do, you've got to do something with your life. You can't just waste it. These people have fought for your life. They've given you your freedom. They came into our camp to set us free when we were finally liberated. And wow, what a price they paid. So do your best.
Go out and live life, because life is to be lived, and not to sit and moan and think of the past, because it won't get you anywhere. It's not a profitable sentiment. But we were young people. We got on with it. We all had jobs to do. We didn't escape that. I was just telling Andrew that when we first went in, we had an issue by His Imperial Japanese, the Japanese Emperor, of soybeans. And they were dry soybeans, and we had to soak them. And I remember my mother and I, at one end of a sheet, squeezing the soybeans. The milk went to the babies and the pregnant mothers. The mash that came out of it went to the elderly and the ailing with dysentery and various other ailments. And the husks of the soybean was made into a very watery stew. And it was watery, and it was called Longwa watery stew, as if it were on a menu. And that came to the rest of us.
What about the weevils? Don't forget the weevils. We got weevils.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember the weevils. But I do remember pulling out a little tail.
Have you been to China since?
I went back in 94 to Shanghai and to Beijing with a group of us. Well, you had to have been born in Shanghai to qualify. And there were 18 of us. And we went back. We found our homes. We found our school. The school that, to me, when I was a little girl, was an enormous grey building, full of discipline. It was just another little grey building when I was all grown up. But Shanghai had changed quite a bit, architecturally as well as every which way. The bund was still there. The house that my parents and I shared, which I thought was quite enough for just Mummy and Daddy and me, with a small garden. There were 60 people living in it. Wow, 60 people. And nothing had been done to it. I mean, the same sort of sea green blue that I'd wanted for my bedroom was still sea green blue. I wouldn't look at it now, but at the time, as a young girl, I thought it was a lovely colour. And no, it had changed a lot. And I don't want to go back again, ever. Yeah.
What do you feel about today's event?
It's something that I have been talking about, shouting about for ages, because I've always felt that it was a forgotten war. And we never got any credit for being there. There was never any mention made of it. So I am infinitely grateful that today it is recognized and that His Majesty the King has put into words a lot of what I have been feeling all this time. And it was a beautiful speech. It really was. I don't know if anybody here heard it.
Okay.
It's worth listening to. He is a remarkable man, our king.
So VJ Day, 1945, we were visited by cameramen who came in to the camp to take pictures. And they saw this little curly red-headed boy, and they said, "We want to take a picture." I said, no, let me get Eeyore. So I ran in, got Eeyore, there he is, and then I stood by the well, and that's the picture, the first picture I think and that's a VJ Day picture.
Well, that was great.
Margaret Martin, you are the Vice Chair of the Far East Prisoner of War Club.
Yes.
And you're here today in that capacity.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about the club and about your role.
Right. It was called the Java Far East Prisoner of War Club by those early men who created it. They were mainly RAF servicemen who were captured in Java. But then over the years, and certainly since 2000, we've accepted any men. We look out for them and make sure they've got all the welfare that they're entitled to.
Right.
But yes, so I didn't know anything about my father's time. He would just say things like, "Oh, if you've been where I've been, you'd eat up all that."
He didn't say much, like many people
That's absolutely
didn't.
right.
Yes.
Yes. And then after he died, we found some documents of his. My mum was too upset to look at them. So it wasn't until at the end of the 1990s and that I started to look through. Now, this is interesting. I went online and I found a lady who said, "You need to speak to the memory man." And it was this one particular figure of Joe Fitzgerald. He passed away. And so I spoke with him. And this is 60 years later. And he said, "I remember your father." He said, "When we came back from Ruku to Java, we were in the next bed to each other for 6 weeks. Your grandparents had a pub in Brighton called the White Horse in Campbellford Street." And he was saying, "Oh, so many years later." He was absolutely wonderful. So we went up to see him and it was terrible.
And is that what inspired you to be involved with the club?
That's right. He said, "You must come along to the AGMs." The AGM joined, of course. And then they found that I'd had a couple of other books published. They said,
Right. And talking about books, right, I'm going to show this to the camera. This is Prisoners in Java. And these are accounts by people who were prisoners of war in their words, right?
Absolutely.
And your
yes.
father has 12 pages in this book, I understand.
That's right. Yes, Fred Freeman. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is,
Yes.
it is so easy to just forget about these accounts. And so a day like today is a reminder of how important these people were. We're talking about people who fought, but also about civilians as well.
Yes, that's right. Yes, we look after the civilian internees as well as the men. In fact, if you saw Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, with Jim Wren. He is one of our members. Yes, they are absolutely delightful.
How many members are there still in the club?
Well, we only know a very few now, sadly. But that doesn't mean to say that anyone's left, because only 1 in 10 ever join a club.
Right,
So
yes. There's still work to do and people to fight.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks so much, Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very nice to see all of you here. Friendly faces. Sorry, I'm not a speaker, but I'll do my best and try and tell you a little bit about what it was like. I went into Longhart Camp, Longhart Civil Assembly Centre, they named us. We had been given these by the Japanese before we went into camp. That was my identity number, 4247, and B for British. And I was very proud of it, very proud. But nevertheless, when I went into camp, I was only 12 years old. And I led a very sheltered and private life, and to suddenly be thrust into communal living with 2,800 other people, all living with the same severe restrictions, behind barbed wire, no freedom, as guest of His Imperial Japanese Majesty the Emperor, created a terrible confusion in the mind of a young person. There were many like us, and we were all confused. 3.5 years later, I was 16, going on 25. In camp, we grew up very quickly indeed. We all had duties in camp, even the very young. In the first 6 months, while we still had malnutrition, while we still had the strength and had no malnutrition, the chores seemed easy. But as hunger set in, no food, or perhaps sometimes bad food, our strength waned, and the chores were no longer easy. They became difficult, but they still had to be done. We were not under supervision from the Japanese, from the guards, while performing our chores, but our camp fellow inmates made sure we did not slack off. Internment killed some. It left many very weakened and broke the spirit of others. But throughout it all, we lived and believed we would one day be free again. We didn't know how it would happen, but it would happen. After all, we were British, and that meant everything. There were a few American, Belgian, and Dutch journeys, but the British were in the majority, and the Brits led the way. We never lost our pride in being British, no matter what indignities we were made to suffer. And there were many. But we carried on, and in the end, we were freed. And the day of freedom, 80 years ago, we've heard many stories to say that we were inhuman in dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But the Japanese would have fought to the end. They were prepared to die, but we were not. We lived and loved our life. So we carried on, and we came out of camp, and we were free. And it was the sweetest freedom you could ever imagine, because we knew that the Japanese had already sent out orders. It was too expensive to keep us all alive in camps. And the order had gone out. We had heard this through our our bamboo wireless, that we were all going to be annihilated. We didn't know how, but it was going to happen. But it didn't happen. And there's the grace of God hangs the tale that we were all free, and we are very grateful to be here today. I thank the Lord for my good fortune to be able to talk to all of you here today, 80 years after the day. Forgive me.
If you have a local news story you would like to share with our viewers, please email us at news@thelatest.co.uk. Thank you for watching.